Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Coffee Review, or MCR. It is January 14th. It is nice and cold, but we've got some fun things to talk about today. How are you doing today, Michael?
Good. Not as cold as you all. It is a little bit colder here in Phoenix, but we're mending it. It's not as bad as what you all had, but except we haven't had rain in like 125 days here, so we're lacking a little bit of the raining season. My pine tree is definitely taking a hit. I did a deep soak pretty recently, but other than that, we're good. So excited for what our topic is today. Today we're going to be talking about our managing metric and imperial settings. We will not be here next week. Jason is
I'm
um,
traveling and you're traveling,
traveling.
right?
I'm not traveling. I have my wife's going to surgery, so she'll be out, and I'll be here um, attending to her. So we will not be having one next week, but we'll be picking it right back up on the 28th, and be in. Liz showed up, so we'll be reaching out to you, Liz. Hopefully, if you want, next week we're going to be the 28th. Sorry, not next week. We'll be talking about statuses revisited. So we were going to have that up for next week, but Jason and I will both be
Yep.
occupied with some other stuff. So
And then Doug McLean has kindly offered to revisit the Power Query Fund. So we'll be doing that on the 28th. So today's topic, managing imperial and metric and imperial settings, was a suggestion from Brian Haley. He put that in our LinkedIn group a couple months ago, and we're going to dive into that today because it's something we haven't talked about, and nor are we super familiar with it. So we're going to sort of figure our way through it today. But yeah, we're still got a few things on our list coming up, but certainly if you would like to come on and show a workflow or help us out, we are certainly looking for special guests or topic ideas to get us through this first quarter. So don't be shy. Let us know. Drop us an email. Drop us a LinkedIn message. We'll get you on here because this is all about the community, right? This is all about helping out uh, different folks who are doing different things. You know, we don't all use Bluebeam the same way. We don't use different products the same way, and it's always fun to learn. So there we go.
yep. And as always, just a quick reminder of how MCR kind of works. We're here for you all, so feel free to ask us any questions as we get into it, and we'll pivot and answer anything that you have if anything's burning for you all on workflow specific. So that's what we're here to do. And also the lovely chat, everyone here that's been here for fruition or just has joined the fold will help answer questions as well. And yes, like Jason was saying, on the 4th or the 11th, we're going to have I forget Doug's last name, not Doug from that's been listening in here forever, but Doug from Oakland out here in Phoenix will be joining us for standardizing workflows on how he does things from the VDC side of construction. And it'll be either the 4th or the 11th. We'll let everybody know, but the 28th we'll talk about statuses revisited. So enough about that. For this, did you have any ideas, or do you want me to start for?
Well, hold that thought.
Okay.
As usual, we'll do our little announcements and stuff like that. We don't really have a whole lot from Bluebeam when it comes to the software, but we do. There was a message from the CEO talking about what's important this year, and it's all the stuff that we sort of assumed: more integration, more Go Canvas, more things like that. But one thing that showed up is that Bluebeam Unbound, their conference in late September in Washington, D.C., the registration for that is going to open in February. And also with that are sponsorship opportunities. So if you want to sponsor it or whatever, all that stuff's going to open up. So if you are part of marketing or any other organization that has funds for the year that looking to get into that vein, Bluebeam would be a good one.
Yeah, and there actually is supposed to be. I didn't get confirmation back that we're allowed to talk about it, but we'll ride the line. There's supposed to be some type of, I'll just say, update today. So we'll see if it comes out. Yes. The update was around, if I recall, recall. I don't recall what it was, but there's something coming out today, and it will probably be after this, as always, since it's
Oh, yeah.
California time. Yeah,
And speaking of California, certainly talking about the oh, never mind. The release notes are already up, so I'm going to pull this up in here in a
oh,
minute.
okay, cool. So
Um,
yeah, there's gonna be an
so,
update.
but yeah, there's a lot going on in California. Definitely been in my thoughts as a native Californian. Those talking about lack of wind, they haven't had rain since May, and let alone in the winds, it's just been terrible. So, my thoughts and are are with California and everybody who's struggling out there. But
Agreed.
um, and that's where a lot of Bluebeam is based in Pasadena. So still a scary time for our Bluebeam friends over there too. But as far as Unbound, there's usually speakers. I think for all of the XCons and even the Bluebeam Lives, there's been a call for speakers. So I would imagine that there will be one as well. Registration opens in February. I'm guessing call for proposals will probably be around the same time. Get your thoughts together, and hopefully we'll see you out there in September. But why not just get into it and show off the release notes? So Michael doesn't get
Yes.
in trouble because it's dated 14 January. That's the day. So we got one new feature. I didn't update, so we can't play with this yet, but cycle through and select from crowded overlapping markups with ease. So kind of like selection cycling in AutoCAD, maybe.
What's that like?
Um, it's one of those things. It's like Ford and Chevy or Apple and Samsung. You love it, you hate it, you pick a side, and you just be a jerk about it. I don't like it in Civil 3D, or AutoCAD, but it has its place. So that's the new function. What's
Cycle
fixed?
through and select from crowded. Okay, so it's probably like tab in Revit. So
Maybe.
like
Nah, I don't know.
if something's overlapping a markup on a markup, which I wonder how many folks have that, but let's just say a lot do.
Hmm.
It's so that you can select underlaying markups probably.
Right. So I don't know if it's going to be like a Control Alt thing, or like in the AutoCAD world, it pops up a little dialog box and it will say these different things,
I would
and
hope
then
it's
you
just tab.
select. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll find out maybe later today. Prompt to install Bluebeam printer. Okay. Printing Microsoft Word. I haven't heard that one. Uh, don't know. Lines. Hmm. Nothing here that I've seen. Switching views in review. Export to Office. Okay, well, I haven't seen any of these issues myself. Yesterday, I did have an issue where my snapshot would not work at all. I had to restart
Really?
review and it kicked back up, but it would let me do the rectangle select, but it wouldn't do the sort of little blue blip that it normally does. It was really aggravating, and of course, it was during a live demo, which is always more fun. Um, but
It's
yeah,
only during a live demo that these things happen, right?
hmm
Or in a time pressing manner of a deadline.
yeah, deadline, training session, live demo. Otherwise, it's always going to work perfectly.
Always.
Um, but yeah, I haven't seen any of these. Have any of you guys? Large discrepancies. Eh, I don't know. But hey, they're still fixing things, and that's a good thing, right? So we will
I,
see what happens.
I would have hoped for the actual markup tools tool sets in the users. But I guess it's only January. But we're kind of towards the end of January. I would like to start seeing an overview of when things will come out. And even if they're like a month late, but a timeline so we can
Hmm.
start preparing pre-existing things. So I'd really like to see the tool sets enabled into the profile. Was there any updates for iOS?
That's a good thing to check. Let's see. Pop over to Bluebeam Cloud. Nothing for iOS since November. What about for
Mm.
Android? We got something in December. Okay.
Set statuses, which you were able to do before.
Yeah, and web, we got No, nothing new since October. So review 21 for desktop got some things today, or will get some things today, and then that's about it. Review
The
20,
but
of course, they haven't updated anything since July, and they're probably not going to.
Yeah, they just did a bunch of patches. It looks like for
Hmm.
this one, and then added some markup cycling, which will be interesting to see how that functions, which we'll talk about next week. Actually, not next week, but the 28th, a little bit
Hmm.
overview. I'll probably update right away. Jason's going to be super shocked that I updated in time in comparative to him because I usually wait, but this isn't that big of an update. So I'll probably go through an update in comparison. So keep you guys all
Uh,
posted.
you're gonna update on day one.
Today? Yeah, I might update just today. Yeah.
That's just that's just kooky. Let's see if I run check for updates. It doesn't say it's available right now. So, but it is still Central Time. So let them get into the office around 9 o'clock. Hit the button. That'll probably be there today.
Yeah, usually it happens right after MCR.
Hmm.
I feel like at 8:30, but we'll see. We'll let everybody know on the LinkedIn when that happens as well, and we'll also let everybody know because there will be call for speakers. This is a 3-day event, which to me isn't normal for Bluebeam, right?
Mm-mm.
Because it was 1 day last year, was it, or was it two
Well, the
days?
Bluebeam Live was just like a
XCon
4 hour thing, right? And then, well, XCon was 2 days.
was 2 days. Yeah,
Was it a day and 2 days or day and a half?
I don't remember.
2 days.
2 days.
So even if they get 3 full days or 2.5 days, that's a long time. A lot of stuff to talk about in that vein. And I'm guessing Go Canvas is going to be a big part of it. I'm guessing some of these other integrations and plugins are going to be part of it. I think there might be some new functionality by then that they're going to talk about, of course. Um, but
That's
this
their
is going to be
deadline.
cool. It's going to be cool, and I'm excited for it. I think the conference wars are back. So there's always been like, there was talk about AU not being great this year. There was talk about AU being wonderful this year. There was talk about locations not being great. There's, what's the sweet spot between time of year, location, crowd size, blah, blah.
Does everyone like the rotating
I
locations?
personally do because I like to travel, but I know some people who like in Vegas or San Diego, one of these places that they're frequently at, that like that's local for a lot of people. It's easy to get to. Like Nashville is tough. I've never been, but like it's going to require a connecting flight for just about everybody. Washington D.C., it's going to require a connecting flight for a lot of people. Vegas, Denver, L.A., Dallas, some of those hub cities. It's pretty sweet. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, we'll like the different areas, but I'm just saying I love finding new places, but at a convention, it's very confusing.
Hmm.
So that's just my thing. You're not requiring, but it's better to be there a little bit early to figure
Hmm.
out the zone versus, you can be very strict on the timeline. My question is going to be, since this conference is so close, how many people are going to go to AU but not be able to go to
Right.
Unbound?
This is
That'll
going
be
to
interesting.
That's going to be very interesting because what you'll see is that they're both the same month. So it's one thing to get
Yeah,
approval to go to one, but let alone two. That's 2 weeks you're going to be gone. Um, kind of crazy.
it'd
But
be right because yeah, AU is the week of the 15th. Bluebeam is the week of the 30th, first, and the second. Or is it the
yeah,
first and the third? I don't remember, but it's one of those. So it's really you have a whole week at AU, you'd have a whole week back at work, and then you'd be out again almost a whole week, right? You work
yeah,
on Monday, you fly out. If it is, I forget what day it's I think it's the 30th. You fly out, maybe it's the first and the second. It's probably the first and the second. So you fly out Tuesday and you're there the first and the second, and then you fly home Friday. So you're literally out 2 weeks,
plus.
almost back to back.
And I just got back from Washington D.C. for vacation after Christmas, and I love the city. and being a tourist, like this is a trip. Like if I'm going to Washington D.C., I'm gonna extend my trip a couple days and go see some stuff because it's incredible. So much to do, so much to see. The weather will be nice, and a lot of the museums are free. So, or all the museums are free basically. Um, so there's some things there that are worth your time if you want to stretch it out. Same thing with Nashville. Like I could go kill in a couple extra days there too. Um, but we'll see. Like Brian said, you're going to have to choose a side depending on, not just what your business can afford, but personally. I think my wife would probably be mad if I was gone for 2 weeks at conferences.
Back to back, and then what are you personally and company wise? What are you trying to gain knowledge from? Right, I think it'll be very paramount for these two big companies to list what new innovations they're going to be announcing prior, because that's going to drive traffic to either of them. People are going to want to know. I would want to know. You would want to know what am I going to gain from AU this year, and what am I going to gain from going to Unbound this year, and that laid out prior. If not, people are going to default to what they've learned before from those events. And XCon hasn't been since when was it, 19? No, it was 2022. So they have a lot of catching up to do to draw traffic to them. So it'll be interesting.
Right.
Very interesting.
The Esri conference is still happening. That's going to be in July in San Diego. So, and then I know World of Concrete is next week. That's getting bigger. And then Built Worlds? Was that the other one that got canceled? I'm sure that one's going to come back too.
Yeah, Built was another big conference. Conferences are full back. I think we're finally back in full swing for conferences. So it'll be exciting. The issue though is these conferences aligning right near each other is kind of a little bit scary,
right?
To see the turnout. Yeah.
The Built Worlds event is in May of this year in New York City. So that's a little spaced out, so if you're in that space, but that's all emerging technologies and materials and designs. Like there's a lot going on there. Another 2-day conference. So
you have Built May, you'll have Esri July, then you'll have September 2 back to back.
Autodesk University and Bluebeam Unbound.
I'm glad they're moving them away from the holidays, though. Like they're not in November. They're not near like Halloween.
Better weather.
Better weather. Nice. Holidays.
Less chances I wouldn't say less chances for severe weather because, Nashville is in that neck of the woods. But
yeah. All right.
Well, speaking of traveling and speaking of different areas of the world, not everybody uses imperial measurements. Some folks use metric, and that's what we're going to dive into today. Again, this is based on Mr. Brian Haley's comment in our LinkedIn group, which I put that link in our chat from a couple months ago. Sorry it's taken me so long, Brian, but this is one of those things that it's coming up more, right? And I say it's coming up more because if you're paying attention, sort of like we do, to what's going on in the engineering and architecture space business-wise, and that's that a lot of these bigger firms have the capital to buy out the little firms, and the rapid growth and expansion is insane. There's firms, I'll try not to name them, in Texas who added 4 more states last year. There are certain companies in Chicago that are just buying up locations left and right, and
expanding their book of business.
Yeah, they're doing all that, and we're starting to see them cross international lines. And when you cross international lines, not only do you get all the things that come with the international law and taxes and blah blah blah, you also get a whole new measuring system, because. And correct me if I'm wrong here, international friends, most of the world is using metric, and then us here in the U.S. are still dealing with fractions and inches and all these other things. So it is a confusing thing to do, and it's even harder to manage. Again, the beautiful thing, one of the many beautiful things about Bluebeam Revu is that it can be set for uh, custom settings, company settings, and it can be rolled out. So how do you go about, accommodating a metric versus imperial? And as we look at what Autodesk does, that requires almost a whole new install. So I've never played with metric settings in Bluebeam Revu. Have you, Michael?
I haven't, but I've used metric system a lot when I was in fabrication. Metric system seems to be the most predominantly used measuring units because of clearance issues and getting down to a specific type of clearance versus your decimal or imperial system that you have. So not using the fraction side of it, but using the decimal side of it, it's a lot easier for metric system. So I'm used to converting from imperial to metric, but that would have been a lot easier if we had Bluebeam to be able to switch units very quickly, and it's not a different install. I would agree. Yeah.
And I do a lot with bicycles in my spare time, which is most of it is metric. So if I'm doing different measurements for different parts, or if I'm sizing up things, it's all metric. And then if I'm playing in Fusion, when I was doing more for my 3D printer, I did all that in metric as well. But when it comes to like working on projects, since I got a civil background, I'm used to decimals, but doesn't mean I'm used to the metric system in that capacity.
Yeah, it's the same thing for me because a lot of the companies in aquascaping are all, because it's not predominantly a thing here. Well, it is, but not like as crazy as it is for Japan or Taiwanese. Germany is another big one, in the UK, and they all use, whenever I'm doing like videos and stuff, it's all liters, right? So I always have to do the liters to gallons whenever I'm purchasing like additives and stuff for the tanks. It's all liters to gallons, and I'm always doing the conversion. So it's made our lives a lot harder for external things like bikes, right? And learning the metric system. And also, I mean, if you look at it, the bolt system that you use for tightening like nuts and things of that nature. I was just doing that because I was just building an IKEA wardrobe set this weekend. And that same thing where it's like, do I use Imperial, or not? And then just like, there is differences in sizes, right?
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes you're like, this will work, but it really is just stripping the bolt. But anyways, let's get into review and kind of show this workflow as you're able to go through. I have some additional stuff that I can pull up. But don't get anxious. Matt literally said that the other day where he's like, I'm anxious by your background. But you're getting there. You're back at it, right?
I need to do some house cleaning. I'm going to put that on my calendar because it's getting out of control.
Someone was showing me the ability to there's a software where you can put everything in. I think the smart thing is just to have a folder that shows that you put everything into, essentially, right?
Yeah, okay. I've got one. It's just I'm not doing good at putting stuff in there.
So do we want to talk about applying units, applying and calibrating? But then we're going to switch between metric and imperial, right? Changing units. Okay. So you can do it one of different ways. You can enable show all units in the preferences and measurements settings. But let's go through and talk about applying scale first. So if there isn't a scale set, and I think needs to be a caveat here that we aren't going to be, let me put you over here. We've had a long conversation about scale, and page is not set to the proper scale. So just use that with, at your own risk in terms of what you're receiving. A lot of us don't have control. Some of us, I'll say, not a lot of us. Some of us don't have control on the way we're receiving PDFs. I'm well aware of that. For those folks that are in the industry, more on the back end of that ripple effect of how things are being produced. But if you do have control and you're able to get a proper set that is at scale, Be aware that you do have the option to come to the bottom right, or if you're in a different profile, which I'm going to switch to Review Advanced profile. That's my preference of a profile if you're all listening in and following in. You also have the measurements panel, so you can always right click and go to show, and then that's not going to show over there because it's on my second screen, but over here, you can go through and say measurements, or Alt U for the measurements panel to set scale. Once you populate this scale button open, you have the option to also set scale here. You can do a preset, which is just our current units that we have in other units that you can preset, or you can do a custom. This is Imperial right here, right? Or is this just, no, this is more for civil right here.
Yep, that's the civil stuff. That would be the metric stuff.
This would be metric. But okay. Then you can also do a custom if you wanted as well. So if you're going to go through and use a custom set, it's completely up to you. But you have your different units of scale here that you have the option. Let's see if we did custom. You have inches and then you have mils right here. Yeah. So you do millimeters. Oh, you can even go further. Why can't I go further here?
Because it's usually the page scale, right? Inch, millimeter, centimeter is something that you would have on a scale. You know, I mean, do I still have the scale in my drawer here? I used.
But these are your results that you can put into. Okay.
One of these, right?
Yeah.
So
you can only get inches.
So I broke my drawer.
Okay. But then you can go through and you can say this is where you have your scale set. We'll go to 16th. For this one, and it's applying a scale to essentially the page. Now you can add it to more pages if you wanted to, so you're not stuck just adding it to the single page. You can also do a selection of pages. So if you had your thumbnails, we'll go to my secondary set. You can select multiple pages that you want to set scale to, and all you have to do for that is you can press your control key and just select the blue rim indicates that you have a selection on those pages, and then you can apply a scale. So you can go through and just preset whatever scale you want to those current pages. We'll just do an eighth, actually selection. Thank you. Apply scale. And then that's another way to go through and apply those. So just options, just showing the ability to go through and add multiple scales. But there is the preferences. So if I go to preferences here, and then I forget where I was going, measurements. So you do have that option under tools, measure. Show all units. Is there a show all units? Do you see this? Let's see.
Show. Units. Grid spacing units, inches, millimeters. Boom,
yes.
Boom.
So you have snapping to millimeters, but there is no show all units. So our friend is misconstrued. Enable show all units.
Where are you seeing show all units?
I just asked somebody for some additional things and it's wrong.
Somebody as in ChatGPT?
Yep.
Our good old friend.
It literally says alternative enable show all units in the preferences measure. Cool. Out there. But okay, coming back into here, you do have that option. And I know this was an update for those that didn't know this. I'll go through and show you. But basically, you can apply a measurement, but you also have the ability to show different units for that specific one. So this is not for the overall, right? See down here. If I go through and look, this is set to feet. You can change individual markups to be different units. That was an update. I forget how long ago that was. I believe it was maybe 19 to 20, if I remember correctly. You can do individual units of measurement to be changed when you're in here.
2018.2 says Doug.
Nice.
It seems so long ago.
Yeah. So I was like 2019. It was actually 18 to 19. That's wild. But yeah, so you do have that ability to go through. So if you're working on specific sets that require different units of measurement, you do have that option. Now, this would have been great back in the day when I was doing shop drawings for custom windows and doors. Because I remember those days for clearances and things of production, bill of materials, sets, that would have been perfect. We were using printouts. And let me tell you how many pieces of paper we would waste with a whole production fabrication of a window if something was wrong and you replotted all of it. There's a lot of waste in paper when you're printing out those 11 by 17s.
Mm-hmm. Lots of waste.
Lots of waste. So yeah, you have that ability to go through back to the units of measurement. You can set those scales. Now let's talk about different set scales on different PDF pages. So there is the ability to go through and set an overall page scale. And this is also good for folks in the civil world that need a different Y. I always try to remember, but correct me when I'm wrong, Jason. You have your X, which is your main one, or is it the opposite? Your Y is your main one.
X is left to right, Y is up and down.
Yep. So X left to right would be your main plot layout. And then you would have your, because I'm going back to the school days, would be your like pipe network or your drainage or your sewer line that you have an example right below, right? And you want
your
to
profile is usually exaggerated where it's going to have a different Y scale than an X scale.
Yes. So for all of you in that civil realm, you do have that option to do a different X scale with a different Y scale, and they are different. I had to re-jog my memory of good old Civil 3D.
Well, whenever you want to trade Civil 3D training for Revit training, maybe we can work that out.
If you didn't know, I actually have an advanced certification for Civil 3D.
Well, I could use some help getting some services done here after the MCR if you want to jump in.
It's been so long. But yeah, I remember taking those advanced classes. Civil 3D is a very robust solution for those of you that are on the other side of the design world and haven't touched Civil 3D. It is definitely a robust solution. I would equate it almost to Revit because you have the corridors that you can build out for those profiles of the corridors, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyways, you do have the ability to apply overall scale. So if you wanted to, we'll do the custom one for this specific instance here to show you all how that works. So custom has the ability to calibrate the PDF, and it's saying pick between 2 points. So I'm going to snap here to here. For all of you that didn't know, holding down shift is that orthogonal positioning. So you can just pick whatever one you want. I'm going to go all the way to the 16 feet here. And this is the units of measure on the PDF, which makes sense that they only give you an inch, centimeter, millimeter, because that's just the page size. And then you have that ability to type in 16 feet here. And then you decide what your units are. As we've all talked about before, you have different options. I'm just going to go with feet in inches. Be aware you do have the ability to do a rounding here for your precision. So if you are worried about your units, I probably would go the lowest to 32nd just to verify. But if you weren't trying to verify and you're trying to just show a rounded dimension, by all means you can. If you all know, in the design world, you should use less rounding to be more accurate before it goes out to construction. We've had even instances currently where you're just looking at a full set and something's off because you're using rounding, right? When you round overall a dimension string, you compound that over that dimension string to the end. So
just you get like a 111, 130 seconds. You get those crazy fractions that don't exist on a tape measure, right?
Yeah.
So anything beyond an eighth is too much.
And then you compound that over a full dimension string. You're going to, at some points, end up 6 inches off. You can end up even a foot off, right? If we're even going further than that. So just be aware. You should definitely try not to round when you're starting a DD, CD set. Well, probably more of a DD set because your CD set should be pretty snuffed out from your DD set. But yeah, anyways, come back into here full circle. We'll just do a quarter, and I'm going to hit apply scale. Now I have the ability to go through and measure and verify. So if I wanted to verify this dimension, holding down shift, see right here, we have a rounding issue as well. So being aware that that ability to round, if it was a different precision set, we may not have noticed that, right? Well, we would have for this one. So I wonder if the click was off because I hit 0 to here. Did I go from here to here? I forget. Let me calibrate.
Oh, and also, did you turn your line weight off too? Because sometimes that can have an effect.
But that much of an effect?
Well, one way to test it.
This isn't an actual CD set, so I don't know.
Yeah.
If I apply an 1/8, is it gonna? Because that hasn't happened. If I go to preset, there it is.
There you go.
Yeah, look at that. So this scale is off. Another issue. If you use the scale bar for measurement, you're gonna have issues.
Well, just entertain me and turn your line weight off and see if it makes a difference.
I'll entertain you. Always, Mr. Harley. Okay, so let me come into here, calibrate. This is probably the wrong scale.
Should be 16. Ooh, yeah. Sneaky, sneaky.
But for my example, we'll just go with what the actual scale of the PDF is, not the scale bar. Okay. The next thing is the ability to create viewports. So if you have an overall PDF scale, everything's going to be at that scale. So if I come over to here and I do my measurement from here to here, it's 2 feet, but it's not actually 2 feet, right? Because it's at a different scale. It's at a 1/2 inch equals a foot. So what I am able to go through and do is I'm able to go through and set what are called viewports for your pages. So I actually have the ability to select a region of area that if any measurement falls into here. Now, this doesn't mean you can't go through and throw a bunch of measurements onto here before you set this viewport. By all means, do so because it does update what markups fall into that region. So now this is set to a 1/2 inch equals a foot. You can set a different precision if you wanted to. You can still do the customize if you also wanted as well. But again, any measurement that had fallen into that viewport here is now there. Now you can go through and rename these if you wanted. So the viewport labels so that you know on the PDF what that size of this is. It's up to you. You had that option just so you're aware. Now, when you're getting ready to place another markup, like if I go to my tool sets here, and I think I have some set to scale ones. I do right here. You have that ability to notice the set scale changing for each one.
Magical.
So another key part to this would be setting scale to your markups. So that way they scale up or down as you're placing these specific ones. Again, that quick ability to change units of measure will be helpful for those people that live in a couple of different units, which is only 2, but whatever units you're going to be going through and changing to, you do have that option. You can select the markup, change it by instance if you needed to. See that? 0.38. Wouldn't want that. But anyways, you do have that option. Shaking your head. I know.
No, and looking at what Doug put in there, and it makes total sense, is that in metric, there's not much point going beyond 0.1 unless you're in machining. You know, if you're doing machining or anything where you have that capability to measure that, there's just no point. But in the field, if you're trying to actually cut a board or piece of trim, whatever, good luck. So, good stuff here. So,
units of measure are a funny thing. But yeah, you asked the question. I'm going to look up when units changed and everything, unless you know off the top of your head, but continue.
What do you mean when they changed from Imperial to metric?
Yeah, when was Imperial made?
Oh boy.
I'm going to drop some knowledge here.
Well, Liz put a chat a link to an SNL skit about Washington's thing, so maybe we'll revisit that later, and that'll give us all the answers.
I'll tell you
But
right now, whenever you're ready. But you go and ask your question.
I don't even have a guess, so go for it.
Okay. So this basically the imperial units trace back to the British imperial system, which was officially established in 1824 by the Weights and Measures Act in the United Kingdom. However, many of the units, like the foot, inch, and gallon, have rooted in much earlier systems of measurement. Some date back to Roman, um, Anglo-Saxons, or medieval times. The imperial systems standardized these units for the trade, engineering, and everyday use with the British Empire, replacing a variety of local measurement systems. It remained widely used until many countries in the empire adopted the metric system in the 19th to 20th century. However, countries like the United States still use the units derived from the earlier English system.
I was aware of the 1824 British thing because that's when things have caused issues with the U.S. foot. So there's an international foot and there's a U.S. survey foot or a U.S. foot, and they are different, and it can cause all sorts of survey problems and construction problems if you don't pay attention to which one you're using. But that's a whole other story. So,
but hold the front door.
Okay.
Imperial system was created first.
Yeah.
And then the metric system was implemented. That's backwards thinking from what I thought.
You thought metric was first because it's easier?
Yeah. I thought we just adopted something different in the United States.
Just to be different?
Just to be different.
No. And Doug says he can't get behind the measurement system that was based on the size of a king's foot. Or your finger joints, right? Wasn't that part of it too, that this is an inch?
I don't know.
But yeah. Vince says that apparently we went metric in 1965 in the UK. And Brian says an old civil survey term that you design it to the 1,000th, you stake it to the 100th, and you build it to the 10th. It'll turn out. It's fine. 2 coats of paint. Yeah, and then, when you start talking about volume and liquids, that becomes a messy thing.
I'm telling you, I'm dealing with that right now with liters to gallons. It's not fun.
Yeah, I've been trying to expand my recipe collection, and I've been doing things that involve milliliters. And like this, what is this? But it's fun. It's a good challenge. Yeah. But anyway, we got about 15 minutes left. We talked about a lot of things in the scales of the drawing, being able to set individual scales per drawing or the whole set. You looked at different measurements, changing the display of different measurements. But what we didn't talk about yet is the tool sets. So the tool sets, the profiles, the preferences. If we wanted to roll out company standards for metric versus imperial, would they need a separate profile for that, or can we mix and match?
Well, as we found out, there are no preferences for unit. Well, I guess there is.
There is.
Yeah.
There is.
What was it? It was units. That was to snap to grids, though. That's all it was.
But still.
How many of us are snapping to grids?
Some people.
Or does this default to... So this says inches. If I go and calibrate, it defaults 2 inches then? Yes. So I wonder if this changes defaults from inch when I calibrate to metric when I go over to here. So hold on. So maybe there would be a need. I'm testing. So hold on. That's not what I wanted. I wanted this. Nope, no, still is an inch.
So that's only the grid, the snap to grid. So when you enable snap to grid.
Yeah.
Well, does that change your grid spacing too? So go back right there. Where it says units, inches. If you change that to millimeter, does it change your...
Yeah.
Yeah, it does change your grid spacing. 6.35. That's weird.
What is it? 24 millimeters, 24.5 millimeters
20,
to an inch.
25.4.
25.4. There's my dyslexia kicking in if you didn't notice. Perfect.
But okay. So the only preference in there is for grid. So again, if you're going to roll out a profile that was all metric,
it would just be your tool sets, maybe? Because you can set a scale to your tool sets.
Mm-hmm.
And these can be Imperial or custom.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the profile itself wouldn't control anything other than what tool sets were in there. And if you had symbols, you would want them set to a metric scale.
Yeah, you just have that ability to set scale to these on whatever you're using predominantly. And then if you send these, they will be preset as well and curated for those. So if I go back into my structural set here, you can easily create. You just have to know what these were created at, essentially, for you to snapshot these. You don't, it's up to you. You can redraw them. Folks do that. I forget, we figured out the differences behind them a while back, but it's also just as easy as doing a snapshot, right? And if I grab a snapshot, this is now in here, and this is scalable. So if I come back over to here, boom, to here. So you just have to determine that the one thing with tool sets, it's the set of tools that get a predetermined units of measurement. So you are determining those units of measurement for the overall tool set. It's a whole tool set. So you decide.
Well, isn't that just magical?
Yeah. It's cool, easy. The other way would be to trace over. I forget, does anyone remember? I'm trying to remember what
Got
oh, I
that?
was like, why is it different? Because that's the snapshot. What's the difference between having a tool set that is? I wish they. This has always been a. Someone asked me that the other day. Can we change? Because you know how in AutoCAD you can change this
Your
orthogonal
polar
position. Yeah,
degrees, yeah.
your polar tracking. That's what it was called. Um, I forget what the difference is between tracing. Why you would want? I think it's modification, maybe.
Oh, I feel like we've talked about this years ago, and I don't remember the answer either.
Yeah. Ooh.
And what I think we all learned in the chat is that there's a difference between an imperial gallon and a US gallon. So an imperial gallon is 20% larger than a US gallon.
Whoa, when did you learn that?
Just now, it's in the chat.
Oh, you know
So,
me. I can check the chat only so much multitasking.
so does that, I mean, because I know gas is by the liter, does that make it a better deal to buy a gallon over there? No, because you're still buying liters. See, it gets all confusing. Why can't we just all standardize?
So you can group these together. I'm trying to remember what the difference is of these. What's the difference between a snapshot and a non one? Let me go down to here and re-add. We'll just add this into here. So you can still create it into account. What's the difference? I forget.
Anybody know? Why would you want to trace a symbol and redraw it in the Bluebeam tools versus just doing a snapshot of it?
I
There
know there
was a
was one
reason, and I do
reason.
not remember. I got all sidetracked by Vince's comment that if that it applies to a pint, that you'd feel shortchanged if you come to the U.S. and ask for a pint versus going over the U.K. So, as someone who consumes things in a pint format, um, you know, every now and then, I need to go over and see what it's like. But there
Is
are
there more
imperial.
volume in a pint than more ounces in a pint than there are in a ounce
Well,
of, what
I
is it,
know.
like usually 16 ounce of beer?
Well, there are Imperial pints that you can get at the liquor store and at like I like Liquid Death, the sparkling water in the can. That comes in a 19.2 ounce Imperial pint, and you can buy beers that are 19.2 ounce, which I believe is an Imperial pint. Um, but those are Imperial pints that are from the UK and over there. But here, a pint is 16 ounces. So a
Yeah.
pounder of beer or some of the large format cans that are in for bottled water or soda are 16 ounce. So there's a little difference.
So I don't know the difference. I remember there was one specific thing that allows the difference between a snapshot and a group. I just don't recall, unfortunately. Oh, look at you have your X and Y as millimeters too.
Hmm.
Oh, that's because it's set to that. That's right. We set it overall to millimeter. Um, yeah, I don't know the difference between these two, between um, the the snapshot and this one.
Doug says it's harder to resize a snapshot converted to a count tool. And then Brian says you can edit text that's in a group. That's how they do it for a lot of their symbols.
You can edit text in a group. Yep. Yeah. So if you had, there's one out of the box, the architectural one, but it's not in this one. Or is it design that has like the section that has things that you can modify the design symbols? Yeah. So like here, you can come in and change the numbering. So that would be one if you're not using a snapshot. The text is editable. You can't create a sequence unless there's a numerical value in there. So snapshot wouldn't work when you're doing a sequencing. Um, that's pretty much it. I mean, to be honest, saving the time to do this is a lot easier than having to go through and recreate these manually. So yeah, just be aware there are options when you're going through and creating custom tool sets for a set scale. Anything else in the chat?
So George mentioned that he wanted to bring a bunch of the blocks from CAD to Review to use his markups, and support told him just to print them in a PDF and then use snapshot instead of a group, which does work perfectly. However, you need to know what scale you're printing that PDF at.
Yeah.
So if you're printing them 1:1 or printing them, 20 scale, printing them at 1/8 inch, 1/8 equals an inch or foot, whatever. As long as you know that original scale that the PDF is at, then it's not a problem to use the snapshot. But there are some limitations, as we just discovered or rediscovered. Editing text is one of them.
Yeah, you would just copy these knowing what scale they're at. So from here, you just drop them down and they all need to be the same scale if you're adding them to all the same tool sets because the tool sets are scalable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's up to you. So you can trace them, but if you don't need them to be modified, you can snapshot them. So it just comes down to how quickly are you trying to get these over. I think there's also that underlay too. Like if you remember, oh, do I not have dark mode on this? Where's dark mode in here? But does this one have the background? No, it doesn't. So the background still grays out, even though it has that white background right here.
Mm-hmm.
See, to the page. So yeah, is anyone upset that I was working in the traditional background versus the new capabilities?
No,
My
but
eyes feel better.
I do enjoy the Switch for sure.
Yeah.
So catching up on some of the comments in the chat, Vince says, I sometimes trace shapes for things like dummy chimneys. That way you can add additional colors, and then you can create a count out of them. Pretty good. Isaac says you could just use a text box to a snapshot as a group within the same effect instead of having to retrace. And obviously you can't do that on old drawings that have been scanned in. And then Brian says our symbols are annotative so that they are always the same scale, same size on the page. No need to scale.
Ooh. Annotative in Revu. So they're 1-to-1, and then you're able to just place them on any scale, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was a comment about dark mode not working on some PDFs. Welcome to the old era of PDF printing.
Are you talking like old scan drawings don't like dark mode? Or a raster based one? I haven't tried that yet. I thankfully haven't dealt with one.
Raster versus vector.
I take it back. I was looking at one yesterday. I should have fired that up.
I'm gonna do it right now.
I dare you. There we go. Dark mode. It doesn't work. It does not work on a raster-based PDF. Oh, that's disappointing.
Why did it? Bluebeam opened. That's why you don't double click. Open on the second screen. This one worked.
Weird.
It looks weird.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I gotta dig through some old client files. I know I had some scanned blueprints from like old churches and stuff from the 40s and 50s, and we were looking to do CAD as-built of them. This must have been 5+ years ago. I'll have to dig through my files and see if I still have them because they were kind of cool. I like to nerd out on that stuff, but yeah, maybe that's for a future episode. We'll revisit the drawbacks between vector and raster. Okay, adding it to the list while I'm in here.
Adding it to the list. Anyone else have anything that Jason's adding to the list right now? Throw it in the chat. For you on the YouTube world, feel free to comment below. We go back and check comments, so you can feel free to comment if you have some topics. But with that,
February 18th, raster versus vector drawbacks revisited. So that leaves us with February 4th with no topic. So Doug, we got you on the 28th. Do you need a follow-up for Power Query to do an advanced Power Query?
So Doug is confirmed for the 28th with you.
Yep. And Doug, okay, we got Doug 2 weeks in a row. Boy, 2025 starting off great. Power Query Advanced. There we go. So Doug will be joining us for 2 weeks.
So he'll be the 28th, which we're not going to do statuses then. The 4th, we'll have the other Doug. So we'll have Doug three weeks in a row on the 11th, and then you have someone on the 18th. The 18th.
So different Dougs. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then, hey Liz, what you doing on the 25th of February? You want to talk statuses?
We're booking these live.
I'm doing it live. Put you on the spot.
That's a week of rodeo, right? I think so.
Rodeo? I've never heard you say that word ever.
The old, I probably haven't said it ever. I always thought about it because it's back in the day. Every time during rodeo vacation, we'd go to like snowboarding and stuff. That's why I remembered it.
Oh, okay.
Like the rodeo out here in Arizona, we're the only ones that get that time off in the old school era.
Like to go bull riding or something?
Well, I think that's the interpretation of it, but that's not what people do. Some people do. I'm not saying, but most it's just another. It's like fall break for some folks. I mean, people still get a fall break, but you used to live here. People get the rodeo.
There we go. So Isaac sent one to check with dark mode. If you got, let's see if it'll let me sign in. Oh, it needs a email address. We don't have time to do that one.
We'll download it, Isaac, and save it and then try it out. But the 28th, we'll talk about statuses. If you want to join us, Liz, feel free to. So we're all booked out through February now with ideas, and then we'll be looking for March. If you want to message, put some things in the comment. You have some workflows you want to show off some skills. And in between that, we'll be talking about Unbound as well, because I believe proposals will be coming up pretty soon for that. I know AU's proposals are what, in May?
Usually.
We should throw some ACC workflows, not specific to Bluebeam, but ACC workflows in March. So March will be let's do model coordination. Let's throw that out there.
There we go. March 4th.
March 4th.
Got it.
Throw some folks in the ACC world. If you haven't been in there, what does that look like? What does this even mean? We're going to throw some mix of outside of the ecosystem of PDFs. There's still PDFs in there, but we're going to be talking about model coordination. So that's what we'll do. We'll ring Matt into it. Matt doesn't even know yet, and he's not here. So
they get voluntold. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Stay warm out there. Stay safe out there. We will see you not next week, the week after. So you should see a cancellation come through for next Tuesday. But as always, in the meantime, if you have any ideas, questions, comments, put them in the LinkedIn group. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Take care, and thanks, as always, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and check out some of the other content on our channel.